Welcome csc235 class. We're going to continue with ex3-dates-arrays, and we're going to work in CodePen again, and we're going to start with the ex2-date string that we finished off with. We worked with ex1 dates, and then we did a date string where we started concatenating variables and putting them together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use arrays so that we can generate names for the day of the week and the month, which we don't have right now because they're being interpreted just as numbers, because that's what the full date object returns. It returns numbers for day of the week and for month, and we're going to have to turn that into a string, something like Tuesday or Sunday, or something like January or February. So we're going to do that next. We're going to continue with this. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to open up your date string. Now again, if you couldn't find this, remember you could go to your dashboard and you might see your pens, or you might, hopefully you have it in a collection. Here's my collection, and here's my date string. Here's my first one, date. So I'm going to open up date strings again. And here it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fork it. This kind of duplicates it. So other than just changing the name, make sure that you fork it. Just click fork and wait till it kind of refreshes for a second. And then go here and click on this little pen. I guess it's a pen because it's CodePen. We'll click on here. We'll change the name. We'll call it ex3, and we'll call it date arrays. So we're going to call it date. I don't care if you call it dates or date, whatever. And arrays, we're going to be using two arrays, so we could use arrays. So it's going to be called ex3-date-arrays. You don't have to put your name in there because this will be part of your CodePen. And then I'll just hit save. And then I'll make sure that it's added. I don't know if it is or not, but I'll make sure that it's added to this collection. So I'll click on here so it gets added to there. And it was added to that collection. So now it should be part of that collection. So make sure you do that. So everything's ready to go now. Now again, this is the code we worked on last time. And what we want to do is just kind of use an array of day of the week names to replace where we have the 0. Now again, let's just look at what we have here. And I may have to update some things here. Let's just look at the HTML just to review. We don't have a lot of HTML. All we have is 5 blank paragraphs with IDs. There's nothing in them. But there is output here, and the JavaScript is creating the output. We also have a H2, which is just more of a larger paragraph, a headline paragraph. And it's saying today is Wednesday, January 31st. I think that's the last time I worked on it. So I'll change this because I'll work on it for today, the day that I'm doing it. Make sure you type it in the code. And it's going to be Sunday, and today is actually February the 11th. There it is. It's the 11th up here, 2018. So that's what we wanted to display. Now you might say, well, you just typed it and it displayed. Well, we actually wanted to generate so it changes each time because I had to just change it. So that's what we want to do, and we want to make sure this says Sunday and this says February. And keep in mind that 0 is actually Sunday. That's the first day of the week. And keep in mind that 1, because I think we had the date here. We have the date, we have the month. The 1 is, and I have these in a different order. So the 1 here is actually, that's the second month. Because remember, 0 is January. 1 would be February, so that's February, and this 0 is actually Sunday. So that's what that is. Even though I kind of have them in different orders here, the order that matters is the way they're displayed when I'd use the string. So it doesn't matter, you know, how I have these. These are just set up anyway, because what we really care about is this part here. So that's what we're concerned about. And what we're going to do is we're going to make arrays. So let's move on to that. So anyway, this is also blank too, and it's displaying. And let me show you how that's doing that, because we did it already. So I'll kind of cover this up so we could look at our JavaScript. And we used these statements. We had a variable that basically represent our date object. That's that big date object there. And then we used these date methods to actually pull from the date object. So we pulled the date from the date object. We pulled the month from the date object. We pulled the day, and we pulled the full year from the date object. And we even output them right here, and we output them in the actual paragraphs using the IDs. So that's what we did there. So that's all the stuff that shows up here. Okay, now this stuff all down here, there's only one line. This thing down here is because of this line down here that says document get element by ID date string and output the date string. Now we put together the date string first. The date string is basically today is, which is a string, and then we put in the day, we put in the month, we put in the date, and we put in the year. And that, again, that's not even the order that we did it up here, but that doesn't matter. So there's the day, which is 0, which is today's Sunday. The month is 1, which is February. The date is the 11th, and the year is 2018. But we wanted to say Sunday, we wanted to say February. So what we're going to have to do is use arrays. And arrays are lists, essentially. So, and then we're going to set them up as variables. We're going to give them a name. And it's basically a list of things, whereas a A variable may be one thing or one data. Arrays allow us to use a list of things, and we're going to use a list of strings because they're going to be days of the week and they're going to be months. So we're going to set these up, and I'll set them up two ways, and you also might want to check out the W3 Schools tutorial and then go down to arrays, and they'll tell you everything about arrays here. They're very simple. You just give a variable name, and then you just put the things that are in the array. You put in the strings and you separate them by commas, and you make sure you put quotes on them if they're strings. That's it. And then you can basically indicate what number from that array. And arrays are numbered, so there's 0, 1, 2, and so on. The first element or index number of an array is 0. So you could go through and read that. I'm not going to go through that right now, but we just have to know that. And it mentions that down here. It mentions index number and all that. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to do it under variables because it's still a variable. So we're going to make a var called weekdays. So we're going to say var, and we'll give it the name weekdays, and it's going to equal. And what we'll do in square brackets, if you look at JavaScript, and you look at the beginning of how it starts off, and we're just going to do the simple way. I was going to do both ways. We'll just do the simple way. Basically, just put your strings inside of square brackets, separated by commas with quotes. That's all you have to do. This one's called cars, and it has a list of cars. Ours is going to be called weekdays with a list of weekdays, and we know that we only need 7 of them. So we're going to go back here, and I'm going to start my square brackets, and it puts 2 right away, and my first weekday is going to be Sunday, because I know that Sunday is the 0. And then after the quote here, I'll put a comma, and then I'll put quotes again, and then I'll put Monday, and that'll be the second day. Now, I'm not going to record all this, so let me pause right here, and then I'll finish this off. Okay, and I finished typing these, and you can see I put quotes on these. I didn't put them on these. And sometimes it's quicker to type them without stopping to put the quotes. And then you might say, oh, well, now you got to put the quotes around every one. And actually, I don't. What you can do is just double click, and if you just do your shift quote, it'll wrap quotes around it. So that might be quicker to just type it the regular way without quotes and then put the quotes after. Sometimes that's easier. It all depends if you're typing a bunch of things in a row, it might be easier to just type them all and then put the quotes there. So there's my strings that are inside there. So I have 7 of those. So the var weekdays, and basically this will have 0 represent Sunday. So right now 0 is being output, but we want to have it show Sunday. So how are we going to do that? And what we're going to do with this array that we have here, and I should put a semicolon at the end of it just to finish it off. What we're going to do, and this will be pretty easy, I'm going to find the one, remember this is weekdays, I'm going to find day here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put weekdays, and I'm going to put a square bracket around this. And that's all I'm going to do. And look, it did it already, because what's happening is this d.getDay comes out as 0. And if we say weekday 0, what's actually going to happen is it's going to basically translate that. So I'm not sure if you're getting that yet, but this is what we're really going to do. Let me just type this a second, just so you understand. Weekdays, if we just type this somewhere, weekdays 0, like this really means the first element in weekdays. So weekdays 0, so this would be Sunday. Weekdays 1 would be Monday. Weekdays 2, that's the way arrays work. Basically, you take the index or the index number from that. So this would basically mean Sunday in there. So, but in order to have it generated automatically, because otherwise we'd just be typing it, what we're doing is we're putting weekdays, and then in the brackets we're putting this get day, because we know that that's going to generate as a 0. Just the way the month is going to generate a 1 because it's February. And we could do the same thing with that. And what I'll do is I'll just copy this, and I'll hit return, and I'll do it twice just to separate it, and I'll call it months. You know, you could call it month names or whatever, but I'll call it months. And then what I'll do here is I'll type all the months, and maybe I won't do all of them, maybe I'll just do a few. And I'll even just type them and I'll start obviously with the first one. I'll start it with January, and I'll do February, and I'll do March. Okay, there I have all the dates, and you're like, wait a minute, you missed the quotes. Remember, you could just do this. You could just double click on that and put the quote on there. Double click, put the quote, double click. Now I have my array called months, and I have all my months there. So this one is 0, this one is 1. And what I want to do here, now it's not displaying anything here yet, because what's being displayed down here is today is day. Now we changed day so that day is using the weekday index number, and it's basically taking a 0 from there and sticking it in there. And basically it's translating as weekday 0, which would be Sunday. Now we're going to do the same with month. Now month we're going to change. Here's d.getMonth. We're just going to put months, and we're going to put the square brackets basically around that. What should happen is it should display February. And let me just show you one thing too. If I go to my console, we haven't used the console yet, but let's just go to my console here, and I'm going to put something down here at the bottom, and I'll just put console log. We haven't done this. It's just another way to output. I'll just do console log, and in parentheses I'll put weekdays, and then I'll put a 3. Okay, you can see what came out here. First it showed weekdays because I wasn't done with it. It showed Wednesday. If I show weekday 0, it shows Sunday. If I showed weekdays 5, it displays Friday. So it interprets weekdays and the index number. That's how it interprets it. So even if I did this and I returned, I'll just throw this in here. I should put a semicolon. Now this is just a special output in this little console area that your users don't really see. But if I change this to be months, and I said months 5, it should display as June. You might say, isn't June the 6th month? No, because we started 0. So the 7th month here would be August, and that's the way it works, starting with 0. So that's the way it's displayed. So that's how it reads this stuff. And what we're doing is months here, this d.getMonth, all that is basically replacing that with a 1, and it's replacing this with a 0, and so that's what it's kind of doing. So it's kind of doing, it's doing weekday 0, and it's doing months 1. So that's where we're getting the Sunday and the February over here in the console, and it's just kind of swapping it in here because we already have a variable that represents the day and a variable that represents the month. So we're just kind of adapting our variable here to really kind of just substitute what's coming from the array. So I'll close this up here, and this is all we want for a finish. I'll get rid of this console stuff. I could leave it in here. It doesn't matter with it being here, because you don't see it unless you actually see the console, so I could leave that at the end. But basically what we did is we just made 2 arrays, one called weekdays, one called months, and we put all our strings in there, and their number, that all arrays go from 0 to whatever number we have, and we put them in order because we know Sunday's the first day, and we know that, and we know that because we already saw it up here when it did it. When it put 0, because when it was the actual day of the week, it was representing Sunday as 0, and it was representing February as 1. So we already knew it was doing that. This is kind of the sample that we were doing up here. I think in my HTML I just typed the wrong. I just put February 1 up there, so I just typed the wrong date. So that's okay. But in this date string, when this date string is being output, what's happening? And remember, what's happening here is we have date string where we put it together. We put together this string that just says today is day, month, date, year, and whatever. And then this is the statement, document.getElementById date string. That's the one that's actually displaying it on the page. That's the one that's doing this. So that's displaying it there. So we just used arrays here to kind of substitute so we could get a Sunday in there and get a February. So that's just using arrays. And we'll be using arrays a lot more. But just wanted to give a little, just to continue on this simple, it's kind of a simple exercise we're doing here, but we're just kind of building up. And the next thing we'll do is we'll even create a function so that we can actually display this by clicking a button. So that's probably what we'll do next with this data array. So we can stop here, and again, I'll just check out your CodePen. I'll see your username up there, and I'll know when you're finished with it. But just make sure that you first fork it, you change the name of it so we have an EX2 and an EX3. Don't keep adding on to the EX2. And then make sure you also put it in your collection so you have a csc235 collection, because some of you may have other classes where you may be using CodePen.